So my talk is called Be the Agile Creator, and it's really about putting together all the things that the authors can do for Agile, and really bringing control of Agile to the author. And so my name is Ken Davies. So a bit of information about me. So I'm a technical author in the recruitment software field. I work for a company called Microdec. And for the past sort of 10 years or so, I've been working for some fairly market-leading companies in their field, producing really innovative products and really ahead of the market. But a lot of their sort of technologies were sort of fairly mature. The programming sort of development environments were quite mature. And so sort of Agile has always been sort of a bit of a challenge. And I've worked in sort of e-commerce, geospatial, and one currently in the recruitment industry as a sort of technical writer. So I've always really been sort of the technical writer, not the developer within these corporations. And the reason why I want to give this particular talk is I was at the AgileTheDocs conference in Prague, which was it's a very, very interesting conference, a lot of very great presentations. There was a presenter there called Dr. Paul Adams who talked a bit about the role of the author in the actual Agile Scrum environment and where they should be placed in the sort of the global context and scheme of things. And one of the things he did talk about was the sort of the writer and sort of developer interface. And I thought I'd talk a little bit more about that now. Basically, I'm not really going to go into the sort of what is Agile or what is Scrum. I'm also not really going to go into what are all the various different methods you can take as your sort of your plan basically. I'm just going to come up with some sort of very simple solutions and just sort of look at the problem from a sort of more of at a distance. Maybe some of the topics have already been covered already. Maybe they sort of it's a bit of a hodgepodge of different ideas from this particular conference. So anyway, onward. So, at the basic level, I think that Agile is very much like a kind of a team challenge. If you see here, it very much involves people working together. It's very kind of organic, and in this case, in many cases for me, it was the developers actually sort of embarking on their own kind of challenge. And it's very much kind of like very sort of organic kind of environment. They would also decide what they want to do. Product managers wouldn't say, we've got to do it this way, it has to be done like this. They'll come up with their own kind of ways, in fact. And as I say, it's very much sort of in control with the actual developers themselves. And I remember when I first started, around about sort of like 2009 for a company that was moving in towards Agile, and I was a technical writer there, all of a sudden people would be talking about things like burnout charts. They'd be getting up and having their sort of stand-up sessions. They were terribly disorganised. It would be like one person would say one thing, but just did one thing during the day. Yeah, fine, they achieved much. Another person basically giving their kind of like almost like life story in a day, basically saying what they'd done, and that was really not useful to anyone. So this really leads me on to the second part, which is the problem of Agile and technical authors working in the Agile environment. Well, a lot of us have been talking about what do we mean by done, i.e. devs work is done. And so devs will have a way of saying our work is done when, say, the sprint ends or when the actual product is actually released. So that they will have their definition of done. But really, is the writer's work actually done? And I think really that's not the case because there are a lot of different information needs for documentation. People want to be able to install the product. They want to be able to market the product. It's obviously very important. They want to be able to use the product interface. Get a way around the sort of the idiosyncrasies of how the interface works and understand it so they don't have to actually call support. So lots of information writers actually need. So to say the writer's work is done, I wouldn't necessarily believe that. Agile is very much, I would say, development driven. Now here I've just given a sort of a deal-work example obligatory deal work example of the guy in the glasses is presumably like a typist or writer, and then you have the app developer next to him, basically saying you've got to basically get to work. So that would be a sort of a very extreme case of an agile kind of like scenario controlled by development. But whichever way you look at it, the balance is really in the favour of the developer when it comes to agile. And the reasons for it is obviously they've got a lot of technology behind them that enables them to get through the sprints quickly, get through get their software out the door ultimately in an agile environment. And you can see things like, for example, automated testing, continuous integration. The name goes on and on. You've probably heard quite a lot. And as you can see, the writer doesn't have a great deal. I know that Chris had talked about various tools that help the writer. And of course, they're getting more and more intelligent. So hopefully that the scales will shift in the favour of the writer, but maybe it won't necessarily be a simple comparison between the two in the future. And don't forget nowadays with a lot of integrated tools like GitHub and Confluence to a certain degree, and even ManCap Central, which is an extension of ManCap Flare, is moving more towards things like reporting and actually getting people to know what you're actually doing and working, and actually can build Kanban boards apparently in ManCap Central. So you might have an environment where your releases are sort of on a continuous basis, and there'll be a number of features in that particular release. And within those features, the potential for documentation is obviously quite huge. There's lots of information people will want to know, for example. There might even be a brand new user guide that needs to go up on Confluence. It might just be an update, or there could be a complete API guide. There may be marketing collateral that needs to go around some of these particularly new features. And so, as you can see, and often that's just saying what the different types of docs are, but if it's just, for example, release notes, which I know companies like Atlassian do a very good job of documenting their features, that in itself is a lot of information per release. And with documentation, as I sort of touched upon, the information needs are quite big. So you've got multiple stakeholders, and just imagine you're basically producing a new product, and the sales and marketing, they really want to get hold of the product, and they want to be able to sell it to their customers. They need information fast, and the product might not yet be finished, it might just be half complete, even 80–90% complete. And another scenario, you have a product that's sort of been around for some time, but you want to upgrade all your customers to the latest code version. And that would require a lot of upgrade information, potentially instructions, that would support, that would serve the system administrators. And of course there are tasks that are just don't really involve development to a large degree before even the actual writer can work in the actual Scrum environment. So the writer might be involved with coming up with an idea of an integration tool. Say, for example, they have all their PDF files and they want to put it into a format by a CMS or something like Confluence. And if it's in Confluence, then the requirements of having a kind of a collaborative kind of documentation environment would work. But then there might also be other sorts of docs that actually are directly within the software, the embedded help aspects. And this is a whole area that is really, we've got a lot of potential to develop. And imagine, for example, you have a software interface, and within that maybe a chatbot that would allow whoever's basically interacting with the software interface to find out the information. And things like microcopy as well, also can go into embedded help. That would not be collaborative in the same way that, say, for example, Confluence would be, or any of the other kind of solutions. And so ultimately, on a sort of day-to-day level, and this is just an example Kanban board, if you imagine, for example, that the sprint at the moment is Happy New Year, so fast forward it a couple of weeks, and basically, as you can see, nothing's been done by the writer. All the stuff that's being done is basically from the previous sprint, while devs have basically moved on to produce stuff for the current sprint, Happy New Year. And so, unfortunately, that's kind of the reality that is often faced. So, enough about sort of the problems, really. I mean, there are definitely some solutions that can be done to, obviously for the writer to develop a more of an agile kind of environment. I think from the sort of very high level, it's basically establishing what the goals are for a kind of an agile environment. Obviously, one goal being complete the work in accordance with the developer time schedules is not really very realistic. It's more about obviously adding the value and the quality to documentation. The other one there I think is quite important is trust. And what I mean by trust, as I sort of found, is not really always trust between the writer and the actual stakeholder, i.e. the consumer who looks at the documentation, but also trust between the writer and the developer, or whoever's managing the kind of Scrum environment, because that's very important to sort of understand that. And it sounds a bit obvious, but people talk about the kind of the agile Scrum as not really involves spec writing to a large degree. But when it comes to drawing an agile plan, there definitely has to be some sort of specification to basically outline what the author's going to do in that agile environment. And obviously the plan should focus on various things like what resources are available for the agile strategy, what resources are not available for the agile strategy, and what are the sort of, more importantly, what are the sort of the main deliverables behind that particular agile strategy. And that's definitely where having some sort of specification can actually help as a kind of like a yardstick for the author and anyone else who basically wants to review the actual agile strategy. Technical authors are meant to be sort of good at asking questions. And very often it's about questions about how the actual product works and about how users might use a particular product. But I think when it comes to Agile, the questions that are fundamentally important for technical authors are basically about, why are we actually writing this in the first place? Why do we need the doc? What are we going to do? What happens if, in scenario X, how's it going to be installed? What are the main benefits of it? Why would I care? Questions like that, when asked within the sort of the Agile framework, I think are very important. But the second bit of not committing, I think, is also quite important because basically the fact the author is there to actually answer those questions and then somebody would answer, whoever it is, regarding whether or not we need that doc. The author doesn't have to commit to actually writing the documentation if it's not that important, but it's this questioning in the first place that I think is very important. And so I've come up with a sort of a matrix really to talk about how some features that are basically being developed are not always, they don't always require documentation, but others definitely do require documentation. So say for example you've got a large product release that requires basically release those product pages. There may be a huge change that goes into it. It might be a new interface, there might be a completely new architecture. And I call that basically a high doc task, high dev task. And then on the other hand, you've also got one that's a high doc task and a low dev task. So in other words, there's a particular feature that's being developed, but that requires quite a lot of in-depth documentation because the behavior is quite complex, the benefits of the customers are quite significant. And then you can also have stuff that's basically what I call low doc task, high dev task, which is basically an area that actually is a very important area of development. But actually doesn't require much documentation. So maybe a short description to say we fixed a particular problem in our software would almost be enough in that case. But the the bottom left box there, I made label that as having no dependency. And what I think this is basically is documentation that's basically done by documenters themselves for things like, for example, redesigning the web page, adding in screenshots when they didn't have time to do that in the first place, anything like just putting in an extra level heading. It might be a lot of work, it might be real sort of donkey work. And on the same token, developers have to do exactly the same kind of stuff as well with their code. Basically it's code refactoring, so not adding in any behavior to their code, but a whole load of kind of cleanup work. And ideally, well, in most cases, they probably wouldn't take place in tandem, but there are instances where there is definitely work that doesn't require documentation that the developers do, and basically the author needs to be aware of when that's happening, and obviously be there at various things like sprint planning sessions and Scrum retrospectives. So, as you can see, some of these don't always look the same size, but they look quite nice there. And so, Agile, as I sort of understand, is basically about delivering stuff on a regular basis in sort of bite-sized chunks. So we're not releasing, for example, an entire massive version of the software. It's basically small releases of new features. But if you notice these biscuits, you'll find that actually they're not of the same size. Some of them are bigger than the others. And I think that's very true for documentation. Because with documentation, if I go on.
Very wouldn't be impressed with that.
So documentation, you might have, for example, you might not want to submit a half-finished version of your doc, but you might want to basically submit, say, I don't know, a paragraph or something that you're working on. It might be for a couple of days even. So having an iterative plan is obviously very important. It doesn't have to be sort of done within that entire 2-week sprint, but it could be done within 5 days or 3 days even. But then some of your docs might be, I don't know, 10 days or even more in some cases, simply because you don't want to submit a kind of like a full version, you just want to spend a bit more time with it. And so obviously you'll have to create some sort of schedule for that, and then also have a kind of a build location, if you like. And it's very possible to do that with things like Madcap, having a version of the help files, for example, for people just to review. And then finally, there will be a version, obviously, that is actually consumed by the customer. But being obviously clear where the distinction lies is very important. So, sprint planning. I think out of all these sort of agile kind of meetings, if you like, and people talk about it being kind of sometimes more meetings than actually producing work. But I think of the meetings that are most useful, I think, are sprint planning sessions, because that is basically where developers will be there, and they will basically think about things. They'll think about terminology, they'll think about how the actual UI looks, and things about wording, the design. For example, like if you have a mobile app, what's the user experience like? All those sort of things are very, very useful for the writer to get involved, and it's also part of this kind of trust building that happens. One thing that's interesting is this one here, card sorting, because very much it's like, what can happen is that you could be in a meeting and you could be given a set of cards, and then you basically put down the cards according to how much effort you think that feature is, and each of the cards are actually numbered. So, for example, it might be even in a sort of Fibonacci sequence. So your number, I don't know, 50, for example, if that's I don't know if that's in the actual Fibonacci sequence, might be a very complex area of development. And the same could be done for documentation as well, maybe sort of a bit further down the line when you sort of built that trust. Showing results, I think, is quite good. So any kind of prototyping that has been done is also quite handy to do in sprint planning sessions. So really what's important, I think, because of the fact that there are a lot of things that could go into a documentation plan, a lot of those things are not really very important for your stakeholders to know about. And so coming up with a very simple kind of documentation plan, or simple kind of documentation status within, say, for example, Scrum, is all that's really needed, I think, because they don't need to know about all the different subtasks that go for documentation normally. In the same way that if I'm going through some developer tickets, I don't want to know all the different subtasks that they go through. It will just simply cause a lot of confusion, and I'll spend more time analysing their processes, and they might spend more time analysing my own. So keeping it very simple for clarity and for cost effectiveness, I think, is quite important. Of course, there could be other plans that you might want to do, even amongst your sort of writing teams, but definitely for sort of circulation, I think the simpler the better. So with every kind of process, there's going to be ups and downs. It could be a roller coaster ride. You know, you could enjoy it, you could hate it, or whatever, and it's never going to be completely. There's no one answer anyway with Agile, as we sort of found out today. But looking at it more closely, I sort of see it more as a kind of a cycle in a way. And so basically it's a sort of karma cycle, if you like, where at the top, the writer will ask the question of whether or not I need the documentation, whether or not it's really useful documentation. If they think yes, they find out yes, they go ahead and they create the doc. They might find after doing it, it's just taking too long, so they fall behind. So you can see that is basically a negative in red. But they'll continue to ask the question, they'll continue to investigate, and then they will maybe reprioritize that particular documentation task, or make another task a more high priority. And then it could basically come around again. They'll gain a resource. It might be another technical author that comes on board that could work with you. And so that's a plus sign. And then eventually they can just move on to the next task and go through the same cycle again. So I think in many cases that there will be a kind of a cycle. At least I've sort of seen it as possible anyway. And so lastly, the production line. I know Alice mentioned quite a bit about lean, and I think one of the important things is that as a writer, you might be creating documentation that's just simply in the planning stage, and you might come up with a doc that sort of, as other people describe it as a sort of the Frankenstein doc, which has basically half-written chapters here and there. But that's not good enough. Obviously, to produce something in an agile environment, you've got to be prepared to deliver, say, a very clear chapter one. Obviously, even the commas are going to be done correctly. But I sort of liken it to the stormtrooper's head. It's basically going to be completely well formed on the stormtrooper's body. So that's obviously very important to have, say, a chapter one delivered and then a chapter two delivered in the same sort of iterative fashion. Just one thing I want to say is that, so I think in conclusion, this is not really meant to be kind of this is how you should do agile, but more sort of ideas basically from what I've experienced myself in the past. And I think that when I started out with agile, I thought it was all fantastic. It was great sort of CV filler stuff. Obviously things like Scrum and burn down rates, and I felt very productive. I felt like I was some days I was working sort of beyond what I should be working in terms of number of hours. But was I really adding the value? I'm not so sure. In the last job, I introduced some processes that kind of help with the sort of the show and tell aspects. And I say things like, for example, release note writing. Agile was quite effective, basically, because the writer was able to describe what the feature was and what the benefit of it was in line with what's being developed. It was obviously the more kind of involved documentation, like some of the deployment stuff or the installation stuff, which was sometimes a bit more difficult and had to be sort of done outside the process. In my current job at the moment, we've taken an interesting approach where I'm involved quite a lot with the actual sort of sprint planning, and that's, I think, new things like, for example, the card sorting activities, and I've found actually quite helpful. But we're still a long way off from a sort of a complete agile kind of environment. That's it really. So thanks for listening. My Twitter address is there, and I've also got a blog which I sort of have been making updates on a fairly regular basis. Please feel free to reach out. And if you've got any questions, now's the time to ask. Sure. Oh, okay.
So you don't probably, from a technical point of view, you don't do agile yet, but you may have to sort of the future. What's the best way to learn about it, to understand how to implement it into your organisation, not just for your own function, but to try and get it into the culture of those around you as well, so that it's not just you doing it.
Yeah, I mean that's a very, very good sort of question. I think a lot of it also should really be done sort of in conjunction with other teams, like development teams. If you're in a kind of a product team where the developers and the writers are kind of as one, and the QA people as one, it's definitely helpful. I think if an organisation is going through some sort of major cultural change, then that's even more important. I don't think there's at any point as an author to sort of say we should do things in a completely agile way if development does sort of don't really care about it. I think a very useful way sort of approach is basically to basically take things like, for example, the concept of Kanban and take a very simple kind of mechanism to sort of put it together. I think it can be done fairly simply. It also depends on what tools are being used. For example, your company might be using things like Jira. In my last company, we tried to put a lot of the project management stuff with the Jira system. That sort of worked to some degree, but there's some sort of more dedicated project management tools out there. Maybe TFS might be quite good, Team Foundation Server. Definitely looking at the tools. I think it's really there's no point really in kind of trying to adhere to one way or sort of just doing scrums for the sake of doing scrums or standing up for the sake of standing up when you can sit down. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways, lots of different approaches basically, and obviously you should really sort of team up with those that are sort of involved in the same area and say that this is documentation needs to be done from the sort of ground up as a sort of an agile process, or as an agile function, should I say? Yeah. Thank you. Okay.